Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, team. It's
You know what that
time of the
means.
week again. Yeah.
Exactly. It keeps creeping up. It is time for Sleep Detectives, where we answer your real-life baby sleep questions. And Beck, you and I both put up a question box on each of our social medias and have been inundated with lots of great questions. So we have picked, I think, 4 or 5, and we're just going to do this rapid fire. So answering the things that are keeping you up at 2 a.m. These would be our very general responses. All right, do you want to go first or me?
I'll go first. I have got one here. It's 2 parts. So why is my little one not sleeping any longer than 30 to 40 minutes at a time at daycare? Mind you, I'm an educator in his room, so everything is the same as at home.
I think this is actually really normal for a childcare sleep. A lot of babies, my own included, so the children of a sleep consultant don't take the same long, chunky naps that they would in the home environment where it can be completely pitch black, the white noise pumping, no other children crying or being settled. So for me, I think even if they're taking 30 to 40 minutes, I'd almost take that rather than no sleep. I wouldn't necessarily see it as a problem. You could always have a look at the timings of the naps, make sure that they're correlating, let's say I don't know, do we know how old this baby is?
I think around 7 months, something like that.
7 months. Okay. So we could make sure that the first nap was aligned with, at 9:30, just like you would at home, and not going down earlier or later, just to see if we can minimize being under or overtired. But usually what I would say is on these days, we sort of anticipate the shorter naps. We aim to get them roughly starting at an appropriate time, and then your rescue plan is going to be early to bed. That's usually how I manage it. Would you do anything different?
Not ordinarily. I think I'm just sort of mindful that daycare is very stimulating. So there's a lot going on and it can be hard to wind down. And I think the key is that if you're keeping everything exactly the same at home and you're trying to keep the same sort of nap scheduling at daycare, but it's not quite hitting the mark, I think you'll still be fine on those days at home. I don't think it will, impact too much. Definitely you want to be flexible with bedtime just to make sure that we're not, going into overtired mode.
Yep.
But I am the same as you. I feel like it's pretty common, regardless of if mum is an educator at the daycare.
Which is so cool.
Not.
I love that this baby gets to hang out with mum during the day at work.
But, also it's sort of, it can be hard being the educator and the mum watching your little one not quite nail it.
Totally.
Yeah. So I imagine that sort of adds a little bit of extra stress into the mix, but I feel like it's probably just something that will even out as time goes on. And if the nights, if he's able to handle the nights fairly easily, even with the dicky naps, then I think you're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. One thing I did notice with my own children, I remember with my second, probably, and when he was still on one nap, that he would be at childcare, let's say 4 or 5 days, and he would do 40 minutes at childcare. And I'd take that and we'd do a 6 p.m. bed. And then on Saturday, he would still wake at the 40-minute mark, and I, in my head, would say, no, I know he, A, needs a longer nap to catch up after a week of shorter naps, and B, he has the skills. He just has his little body clock after a week of short naps isn't used to this. And so I used to work to cot time, which we should absolutely do a whole episode on our thoughts and feelings about cot or crib time, because I've had a few questions about that. And I used to say, okay, let's say it was 12:30 until 2 was the nap that I was aiming for. I'd say, no, he's going to be in there until 2. And sometimes he would even stand up in the cot and say, Mama. And I'd think, oh, this is game over. Like, this is ambitious, Sally. And then after 9.5 minutes, he lay down and went back to sleep. Come Sunday, he slept the full nap, no issues, no clunky sleep cycle changeover. So I just knew he needed a little bit of a reset and opportunity to go back down. He'd take it, and then he figured it out for the next day. So if you've got short naps at home, you can still excuse me, encourage the longer, more scheduled and desired naps when you're at home. It can sometimes, we just have to allow them to be humans and babies, that they've experienced one thing here and something else at home.
Well, I think they're very good at, what we do at daycare is what we do at daycare, what we do at
Mm.
home is what we do at home.
Yep.
So you've just got to create that really clear expectation of what your sleep practice is.
Yep.
And this is, something that happened a lot when I was a nanny, is that the children would go off to sleep totally fine for me, like totally
Mm.
fine. They were absolute angels for me going off to sleep, because
Yep.
I had to, my job finished at 7 o'clock. So I needed to have these kids asleep. So
Mm.
before I left. And so we just had our rhythm set, and it was night, by 7
Yep.
o'clock, lights out, and I was on my way home. But come parents, when they were, it was their,
Yep.
nights to do the settling. They were up till 8:30. Like, it was just so they are able to differentiate what happens at home is what happens at home, what happens at daycare happens at daycare. So to set that
Totally.
clear expectation up.
Both of mine got patted to sleep every single day at childcare. I have
Yeah.
never patted either of my babies, and nor have they needed it or wanted it. But I was like, whatever you need to do to get a nap in. I actually think this leads into one of the questions on my end really nicely, about they'll do something different for one parent or the caregiver and something
Yes.
different for the other one. So I got this question that's, baby won't let dad do bedtime, get super upset. And it is so common throughout. I've got a 6.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, and both of them, even now, still have waves of parental preference, whether it be me, whether it be Mr. Sleep Concierge. They go in waves, and it's completely normal and developmentally appropriate. I also think, and I'm going to assume, so this is written by, I'm guessing the mother, is that mothers usually are the primary caregivers for the baby and spend so much more time doing it. And so baby knows that to be the pattern and the expectation. And then when we throw dad in the mix or the other parent in the mix, the baby's just not in on that. They're just not in on that plan. And so it can naturally be like, excuse me, what? Usually I get 3 pats and one burp and down I go with mum, and dad, it just throws things out of whack a little bit, and that's normal.
Super normal. And you've just got to create. I often like to say to my families, particularly if we're doing a bit of sleep work, I'll try and get mum to set the stage, for the first 4 or 5 nights, because if mum's doing bedtime, then she means business.
Yes.
And then, and so we're setting the stage, and then we definitely want to get dad into the grind of it all as well. And so we usually pop dad in maybe like night 5, 6, 7. And the key is that you want to have consecutive nights with dad doing baby, because it does feel different for that very first night. They are usually a little bit like, but wait, like, I know mum's out there.
Yes.
Why is dad doing it?
They're so clever.
And so there's often a lot of resistance to that first settle, or if it's just a random one-off kind of settling evening for dad. But the key is just to sort of have consecutive nights, just back it up, for 2 or 3 nights doing the same thing and having dad do it, so that then it becomes normal. And then baby can detect dad's pattern as well. So even though mum's, creating a really clear pattern of response and so forth at bedtime, or doing a set bedtime routine, dad will have a slightly different way of doing things. So little nuances that our babies have to sort of pick up on and then predict and expect, just to make it feel calmer. But the key is for dad to not feel anxious about the whole deal. I feel like they've become a little deflated.
Absolutely. I've worked with lots of families where that might be the mood. And I do also know, on the flip side, being the mother, sitting out on the couch listening to bedtime not go so well, and that want to, I'll just go in and do it. Like, I'll just go in and fix.
Yeah.
And I know that I have actively had to coach myself even to let them have a chance, because I also then look at this realistically. If you've got multiple children, you can't always be doing exactly the same thing for every child every night. But also, What if you were to get sick? What if your
Yeah.
appendix ruptures today and you're in hospital overnight? I mean, not to
Yeah.
speak any of that into existence, but there are moments where you will not be available,
Mm.
and they will manage it together. Baby and dad or the other parent will
Mm.
muddy their way through, and baby will go to sleep and it will all be okay. I just know,
Yeah.
as the audience sitting, listening, watching, and as
Mm.
the person who does it 99.9% of the time, it can be hard.
Yeah.
And then I actually think I probably have put pressure on Mr. Sleep Concierge when he's thought, oh my goodness, Sally's out there listening and watching the sleep
Oh,
concierge
but it's
herself.
nothing good like
And then, it all kind of gets a bit
yeah.
tense and heightened. So even in that scenario, if you're wanting to let dad have a really good go at this, even if it's, as you said, Beck, on nights 5 and 6 onwards, go for a walk, go and have a
Yeah.
bath, go outside,
Podcast
like,
then. Yeah.
yeah, listen to this and just leave them to it so that everyone can have space, baby can have space to pick up on the new pattern. It's almost like dad in this scenario is a new sleep association. So even if we were changing sleep associations and we've gone from feeding to sleep to rocking to sleep, baby
Mm.
isn't in on that, and it can be hard and take a while and there could be tears. And then after a couple of nights, baby's picked up on that. So think of dad maybe as a little bit of a sleep association. We're making change. Baby's not in on the plan. Set the stage for them and let them follow through,
Yeah.
and they'll
Love
figure it
that.
out.
They will.
Excellent. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay, 5-month-old baby feeding twice overnight, and the second feed keeps moving later and is now at 5 a.m. Do I keep feeding both?
This is a good
This is a
scenario
really
to
good
be
one.
in for a 5-month-old.
Yes,
Don't you think?
absolutely.
I
And
think it
what
tells us a few things.
Yeah, first of all, I think this baby's ready to drop to is wanting to
Yeah,
drop one feed. We can
I agree.
nudge this out. The way I would tackle this is and depending on the timing of that first one, but I would probably look. So let's say baby's feeding at 11 or 12, for example, and then at 5 a.m. I would make sure that the 5 a.m. feed initially is very small. We don't want to take hunger away from the 7 a.m. feed. But in terms of overnight weaning, I would say actually resettle the first normal feed time. So 11 or 12, for example. Resettle, resettle, resettle. Sleep train, sleep train, sleep train until baby goes back to sleep, and then offer the full feed at the next waking, which let's say could be 1 or 2 a.m. And what you've just done is push out your feed to 1 or 2 a.m. You offer a really big full feed, breastfeed, bottle feed, doesn't matter. We're tanking up at this one, and then you drop the 5 a.m. Now, baby may still wake at 5 a.m. and you are going to resettle, 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 resettle until they go back to sleep and or 7 a.m. And then you have dropped that second feed, but you've kept this really chunky one in and you've nudged it out at the same time. That made sense in my head. Did it make sense coming out?
It did. Yeah, totally.
Okay, good.
No, it definitely did.
I actually got really excited reading this because I was like, this is what I would do.
Yeah, and because it's a really positive point to be at with a 5-month-old, because they're obviously doing quite a long stretch in between that first and second feed. So that tells us that there's really great calories going in throughout the day. It also means that they've got some pretty decent self-settling skills going on, because they're doing quite a, they're the second half of the night is fragile sleep, so they're waking up every 1 to 2 hours. So the fact that they're probably having a feed in the first half of the night and then going all the way through till 5 just tells us that there's lots of self-settling going on, and that
Many sleep cycles being linked. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely I am on the same page. You resettle the first waking, you get that nice big stretch all over again. So let's just, for context, I think maybe you're wanting a little bit of, how does that all work to the listener? So if they're doing, say, for example, that feed is happening at 10:30 or 11 o'clock p.m. and they're going all the way through to 5 a.m., that is a good 6.5 hour stretch. So I think that that's what you're sort of referring to, is like, okay, so if they're then going to be resettled and then wake at 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock for that actual one big feed, then you can be confident that they can do that stretch to to the first feed of the day because they're doing
Yes.
that big gap ordinarily. Does that make
And
sense?
equally on the other side, yes, it does to me.
Yeah.
Equally on the other side, so we've got them to do this long, big stretch at the beginning of the night, but it should also give you confidence that that one feed is substantial to then see you through until morning because they
That's
were
right.
already doing this long stretch in between the two feeds.
Mm.
Our golden rule is always that the closer that early morning feed gets to the 7 a.m. feed, the smaller it needs to be. We can kind of, yes, you will have whittled it down. Now you can drop it. And now
Mm.
oh, you're so close. You're so
Yeah.
close to a full
I'm
night's sleep
excited for
with.
this family. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, I think you can hear it in our voices. Like, oh my God, we're so pumped. Like, feeds are really
We're
like,
cheering you on.
yeah. And like, well, we talk about this a lot, but feeds really are, the crucial element to getting sleep organized and
Mm.
looking schmick and so forth. And so to have this up your sleeve at 5 months as an issue, that's really not an issue because it's easily solved.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Next question. 6-month-old cot settling worked amazing for the first week, and now week 3, it's taking longer.
Mm. Oh, this is a very typical thing to happen as well. So once
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, I always find once you're starting to, dip your toes into doing some, less is more sort of settling. So if you're rocking and, holding and all the things to get your little one off to sleep, if you decide to go to cribside or cotside settling, then initially it's a little bit tricky to start with, and then it starts to
Mm-hmm.
get easier. And then it's normal for a little bit of resistance to come about because you're strengthening their skill set. So as their skill set develops and strengthens, you're probably finding that you're getting a couple of stretches overnight, which are a little bit longer, and they're able to settle themselves off to sleep, which means that they become a little bit resistant to all the help that's being offered at bedtime, simply because they're so much better than they used to be, and they may not
Yeah.
necessarily want all the help. So a little bit less is more approach can work wonders once you've sort of at that stage.
Definitely. And I think this is a good example of how babies communicate,
Mm.
is that if something is working well and then then is less productive, you can take the confidence that you've seen them do this beautifully on your own because you've been sitting there next to them.
Mm.
They're actually saying, hey, this is a little bit too much now. Can you let me have a go? And so it's just about doing less of what you
Mm.
have been doing, whether that it means you just move further away from the cot, but if you want to still stay in the room, do you step out of the room and have some curiosity and then look to go in and do your pats if they escalate, and then leave them to it again? And it's just about doing less, because we also need to get you out of the room at some point. For me, it wouldn't necessarily be very sustainable to have a family, or even for myself, I should say, to end up sitting cotside for an hour plus every night.
Mm.
So I would be looking to, that is an amazing place to have got to. Now, how do we wean you out and let baby use these skills that they're telling you, hey, I got
Mm.
this. Can you give me a little bit of space? The other thing I think is often this can be age dependent as well. So
Yeah.
6-month-old babies are very alert to their surroundings, and sometimes cotside settling for some babies has a bit of a shelf life just in terms of stimulation.
Yeah.
So I think amazing effort, because cotside settling sounds like it would be easy and blissful, and a lot of the time it's actually really hard work. So if you've done the hard work and it's paid off, huge kudos to you and baby, and now you can start doing less of what you're currently doing, and that is such a normal and great progression to be up to.
I think I know that this is supposed to be fast, but I always feel
I feel
like
like we should just we shouldn't ever say that we'll do this. We know ourselves too well now. We are in to give a full answer.
how like, okay, so oh gosh, I hope
Oh,
this
here she
makes
goes.
sense. I know. Sorry, everybody. Listen, if your little one, if you're having to do some sleep work because you're, say, taking this family, I have no idea because I don't know any of the background, but let's just shoot our shot and say the 6-month-old was waking every 2 hours over the course of the night. They've implemented some cotside settling at bedtime, and now in return, they're getting less wakings overnight. So that's how they know that it's starting to sort of take effect.
Mhm.
So let's just say now little Johnny is going off to sleep with some padding and then sleeping 4-hour stretches over the course of the night. So they're doing their full feeds, and then it's another 4 hours and then another full feed. One thing that you can be certain of is that your little one is in between those feeds, your little one is still waking and they're actually putting themselves back off to sleep. So the key to look for in terms of how your little one's skill set is strengthening is 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, are you having to go back in and, do a quick little pat to get them back off to sleep? Is that how it's rolling? Or are they having a seamless run to 2 o'clock? And if they're having a seamless run to 2 o'clock, then they're waking, they're having a little look around, they're sort of going, everything is fine, I'm okay, I can go back off to sleep, I don't need the padding or the cot side settling. And they're taking themselves back off to sleep. So the fact that they are waking and doing that for themselves tells us that their skill set is pretty good, and that they may not necessarily, and that gives you that sort of go ahead to go, okay, well, they can do it overnight, they can self-settle overnight between sleep cycles. I wonder if I offer that same opportunity at bedtime without being in the room or coming back and forth or whatever it might be. Like, can I be curious and do a little bit less at bedtime? Have I confused everybody, or do you think?
Because I think there's this common misconception that any kind of sleep work, and I'll use the word sleep training, but just encouraging a baby to sleep more independently means that babies stop waking up overnight. And it doesn't. A baby will continue to rouse at the end of a sleep cycle, just like you and I do. But the difference is, as you said, their little sensors come back in, they check, no, nothing to see here. I'm going to roll over and put myself back to sleep. And that is your sign that my baby is self-settling. My baby is linking a sleep cycle. I'm not having to assist every 45 minutes to 2 hours overnight. They've got the skill. Now I'm going to see how they can do it at bedtime. Is that what you were saying? That was my 100%. Understanding of what you were saying. Yeah. They're giving you really great glimpses into their skill set that you can take with confidence to say, great, the next iteration of this, the level up, is to see what can happen at bedtime by doing less.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. So look for those glimmers of hope.
Yes. Well, we've like fleshed out and made up our own story about this one question, but you can see how what we're looking for is what is a baby communicating in this? Because yes, we can put you on a schedule and feeds and environment and blah, 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 but a lot of the next steps are determined by what baby is doing, and what they are doing or not doing is a form of communication so often, and they actually play a huge role in this. Yes, I send the plan to families, but I really need to send the plan to little Johnny and say, hey, I see you self-settling for 4-hour stretches. Now we're going to do it at bedtime.
I think that's the beauty of having a sleep consultant in your corner, so just having someone on hand just to say, look, this is what's like. Sometimes you feel like, oh, that was a bit of a hooer of a night. You know what I mean? Like, but a sleep consultant will be able to decipher what's going on and give you the positives from each and every scenario. So it is an interesting. The nights provide a lot of information for us, and the communication from your little one tells us what progress is being made and what we need to work on next. So we're always putting one foot in front of the other.
Yep, absolutely. And we will cheer you on every step of the way. Should we do one more?
Oh, why not? We're on a roll.
Okay. What does resettling mean when baby wakes at night while sleep training? The answer to this question is, what is your technique at bedtime? That is what needs to be followed through at all of the resettling sessions overnight that aren't a feed. So, for example, we might put a baby who is feeding 6 times overnight. We might drop down to 2 4-hourly feeds, for example. I'll just use a 6-month-old baby, for example.
Yep.
We're going to put them on two feeds. Now, I would go into night 1 absolutely anticipating that they're going to wake way more than these 2 magical feeds. What are we going to do at all of the other times? It's whatever technique you used at bedtime, you are going to follow through consistently. So if you rocked your baby to sleep all the way at bedtime, come 9 p.m., 11 p.m., depending on when your feeds are, all of those other moments, you are going to rock your baby back to sleep. If you are doing a more traditional sleep training technique, if you are using a FERBA, you're going to use your FERBA at bedtime, and then you're going to use your FERBA at all of these other moments outside of a scheduled feed to get your baby back down to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's because babies need and want to know what's coming next. And if you do one thing at bedtime and then 5 different things overnight, it's going to be very confusing and inconsistent, and you're not going to get the results that you are after. And inconsistency usually equals more tears. Mm-hmm. So there's no one answer as to what does the resettle look like while sleep training. It depends on what your technique of choice is as a family and what your comfort levels are.
Yeah. And the key is
How
to
does that
not
sound?
start. Yeah, it's perfect. And I think the key is to not start something if you can't follow through. So, for example, if you've decided that you're going to rock your little one back off to sleep at 11:30 p.m. and then 40 minutes into it you're over it, and like 40 minutes is a long time. No one's taking that away from anything. But if you then start sort of going, okay, well, now I'm going to bounce on the Fitball for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to try and co-sleep with you. All of those things just add to the stimulation, and we've got absolutely no consistency there. So, and likewise, if you try a technique, say you are doing your technique and then you decide to pull the pin after 40 minutes, then we're starting to have sort of issue central as well there. So you've just got to just be mindful that if you're starting something, you need to be able to follow through to create your really clear goalposts so that your little one understands what it is you're trying to create in terms of an expectation around sleep.
Absolutely. So start the way you want to finish.
Start as you mean to go on.
There you go. I knew I was somewhere along that. I think the other thing, just to flesh out something you were just saying, because I can't help myself, is let's say we're rocking for 40 minutes and we're trying not to feed because we've been feeding every 2 hours overnight. And then at the 40-minute mark, you feed and it's not a scheduled feed. I mean, no shame, no judgment. We're not there at 2 a.m.
Yeah, we don't
appreciate
care.
It's very hard. We don't care. What I would say is that we never want a baby to learn that the longer and harder they cry, the more likely they are to get X, Y, and Z. Because our job is not to do longer and harder of anything. Our job is to minimize tears, get on a consistent rhythm and routine, work on self-settling, and everyone get the sleep that they're after. So that's just one other thing to consider, that when you go into the night and you're doubting yourself and then you want to go back to the crutch that you're trying to move away from, just factor that in, that we don't want to reinforce long, hard bouts of crying.
For anyone playing along at home, that's what we call intermittent reinforcement. So we really don't want to do that. And what happens when that starts to become apparent in your ability to self-settle, or your self-settling strategy, is if once you're sort of pulling the pin at a certain stage and I can only do 40 minutes and then I'm going to feed, is that it actually becomes part of the rhythm and routine of your little one settling to sleep.
Yes.
So then it's just you're playing a role each. So I was just speaking with a client before who was struggling with bedtime, and it was just a thing that happened. So for 45 minutes, baby would play up and, resist and refuse and carry on. And then mum and dad would sort of be thinking, we're going to hold steady, but 45 minutes is our max. So lo and behold, 45 minutes came around every single night. Everyone's trying so hard to do things differently, but eventually the feed happened or the rocking happened. And then it's just a role that you play. It's just a part of bedtime.
It's ritualized.
Yeah. And then so no one's trying to do anything sort of different. But the thought there is with your little one that they just cry for 45 minutes. Like, part of my role at bedtime is to cry for 45 minutes and then I get a feed.
This is what we do every night.
Yeah. And maybe there's not even like it is what it is. So, I think that's it's a great answer in terms of the settling.
Yeah, whatever your chosen technique is, that's what you do for all of your overnight wakings that aren't a scheduled feed, so that your baby can pick up on the new pattern and expectation. You can see it through, and then if it's a more hands-on technique, you could then start to look to do less as you work on more independent self-settling skills.
Perfect.
I could have just said that.
I mean, we're quite long-winded at times, aren't we?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll have to edit this part. But we're passionate. We love this, and we don't want anyone to think we're just saying, "Well, you just do X because the sleep consultants told you so."
But isn't this the reason why we do this? So that we really get behind the why. Our whole purpose for this entire podcast and for Sleep Detectives is so that people understand there is actually reasons. There's really clear, specific reasons why we do the things that we do. It's not just about a timing here or, a feed there, like the reasons behind it. And it gives you that confidence to follow through when you understand why.
Definitely. And you might have just listened to that last answer and perhaps it's even resonated with you being like, oh, that's me. I do end up for want of a better word, giving in, or I cave. That's okay. Like, none of this ever comes with judgment or shame.
No.
It's that moment of reflection of like, oh, maybe that could be one of the missing pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. There's an inconsistency here. Great. I know the rest is lined up. I've got confidence now. I'm going to see this through, and then watch as the change falls into place.
And I think one of the things that we realised earlier this week, Sally, is that loads of the listeners are taking our tips on board from the podcast. Oh my
goodness, yes.
And we're doing ourselves out of some work.
I know. I rang back, we spoke on the phone yesterday, and I said, I think we're doing too well at the podcast. People don't need us as much. They're piecing it together. But you know what? Yeah. That's what we're here to do, because sleep problems affect so many families all around the world, and sometimes it is the smallest tweak. And by hearing us explain it and talk it out, nothing that you are experiencing is anything we have not seen or heard or worked with before. And we have the greatest confidence in your ability and your baby's ability to sleep better. And sometimes it is just a matter of hearing it spelled out and it hitting home, and then you having a red hot go, and that's when you land in our DMs to say, oh my goodness, this worked. Baby slept 3 till 7, or we've dropped a feed, or it's incredible. So please keep those coming. We just love to hear it.
So we believe in you. Be brave.
We absolutely do.
And rock
be curious. That's our other favourite one.
Start as you mean to go on.
That's it. Yep. Know your catchphrases. And we will see you on the next episode of Sleep Detectives. Good luck, everyone.
See you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye.